Don't think about anything. Don't think about anything. Don't think about anything but me. Don't think about it, 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 but me. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about anything but me. Don't think about anything but me. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about anything but me. Don't think about anything but me. Don't think about anything but me. Don't think about it 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 but me. Don't think about it. 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 Don't think about it.
What is up? Like, I made that song on Suno. I tried to make the most easiest song I could think of. I wrote like 3 lyrics and then just said, remix this a ton of times. Look where we're at. Look where we're at. Thank you guys for joining. What we're going to do today, I'm going to play the recording of a Spaces that I hosted that won me $5,000 from the UFO community on Twitter. And if you're not aware of what happened or how it went down, basically there was a contest that was started by Steve Austin. It went through UFO Talk Radio and all these other things, and it was vetted. It turned out to be a real contest with real cash money prizes, and the contest was essentially host a Spaces, talking about your theory of the community, of the UFO disclosure process. And I personally think that it's a wild ass contest. It is. It's wild. And sorry for switching the screen around, but it's wild. And I joined it, and then I won it. So you can imagine the surprise for me, right? Like, I wasn't sure I was going to enter it, and then I made it into the finals, and then I saw the competition and the people that were really putting their all into it, and so I decided to do the same. I haven't listened back to this Spaces yet. I don't know what it sounds like. I'm imagining that it sounds just like the way I'm talking to you now. But we are going to listen to it together, okay? We're going to listen to it together. I'm going to play it here so that we can always call back to it. You don't got to go through and search a ton of stuff to get to it. Real quick, I want to say thank you to the judges. Thank you to Steve Austin and for everyone hosting it. Thank you for the people who've listened to my Spaces over the last two years. This does feel like validation in some ways. You know, at the end of the day, it's just a competition, and it was about a specific thing. This isn't necessarily supposed to validate my 2 years of talking to the UFO community through Twitter Spaces, but I do feel that way, so let it ride. You'll see that there's 2 chupacabras here because I have to listen to my own space, so this is just going to be that. All right, we're just going to have an audio experience. I'm going to drop down and I'm going to be in the chat if you guys want to chat with me. If you're over watching on X, great. That's where I win the money. If you're trying to support my YouTube channel, that's even better. because I am very close to meeting the requirements. Okay. I'm very close to meeting the YouTube requirements for selling merch, which and getting super chats on my channel, which is huge. It's a huge thing for me. I love putting out videos, and I've never been able to monetize them in any way, shape, or form. I just put them out for free, and then that's that. And I probably put out hours of stuff. I mean, hours. And I have a new documentary coming out too, covering angels and aliens. So if you want to come over to YouTube and hit the subscribe button, watch it over here, all good. If not, no worries. We're gonna play it. Without further ado, let me kill the music. With that, B did correctly describe as smooth. It is smooth. Thanks for y'all being in the chat. I'm going to be in there with you guys, and then let's listen to the 30 minutes, the most productive 30 minutes of my entire life. Here we go. This is Shadows of the Invisible Sun. I'm Tupacabra, and I think everything I'm saying is true. So that's the POV I'm coming from. Ufology today is a very fascinating landscape of what looks to be a mixture of theology and scientific endeavors, which I find to be a very interesting mix. I think it's one of the most important mixtures that we have in today's society, what with religion or spiritual ideas, combining with scientific research in order to find new truths. That's what I think. I have my own experiences throughout life with creativity and other things I've done that definitely back this idea up. It serves as my foundation for investigating the phenomena. And so I was surprised to find out that from a lot of very important people uh, to the UFO topic, a lot of the people who've been involved for a long time, names like J. Allen Hynek, Jacques Vallée, Kit Green, Hal Puthoff, the list really goes on. These characters are all tertiarily, if not directly, involved with different esoteric groups: Gnosticism, Rosicrucianism, Theosophy. All this stuff is very alive and active within the upper tier of ufology. And so I want to kind of go over what they believe, what these ideas and these belief systems contain, and what kind of answers they hold to the UFO subject, and why so many people at a very high level are finding their way, maybe finding their way to the UFO topic from these more esoteric ideas. So the reason why I think that these ideas are so in sync and so translatable from one to the other is because these esoteric ideas deal with non-physical realities, and in these realities, non-physical beings exist, and they can interact with us because we too have non-physical aspects about ourselves. The three body situation, right, of the mind, body, soul, is very active in this, and so is the as above so below conversation, right? So meaning that if a person has a mind, body, and a spirit, at least, right, those three at least, then perhaps the god that we're part of also has those same systems. And so that's kind of the basic idea, that if we have a mind, a body, and a spirit, then so too there must be a body, physical world, a mind, astral world, and a spirit, kind of an etheric world. So they're just kind of names and labels that we've put on these different planes of existence, which I think is very fascinating. It's also kind of vague and very hard to pin down if you don't understand the language. And so one of the ways in which these UFO thought leaders mask their esoteric beliefs is through Jungian psychology. And you can find this out. You can look through every main UFO guy that I mentioned and then look up, if they've ever mentioned anything or talk about Jungian psychiatry, or sorry, Jungian psychology. And the reason is because Carl Jung, through his private investigations into the psyche of man, came up with these concepts of archetypes. And archetypes are kind of like these everlasting elements within the human consciousness, not just a person to person, but all people apparently share some type of collective unconscious, which house these archetypes. Now, the archetypes are directly analogous to the spirit or these angels or demons. And so it's an easy way to mask it. If you're trying to give a talk on Jeffrey Mishlov's show or to the Soul Foundation, and you don't want to come out and be like, these things are angels and this is what we have to do and all that stuff, you would mask it. And they mask it, like I said, in Jungian psychology because of these archetypes and whatnot. And if you need evidence for that, just look into things like synchronicity. How often do these figures talk about synchronicity, which is a Jungian concept? And not only is it a Jungian concept, but it's one that deals with different dimensions. So, like in synchronicity, in this belief of synchronicity, it's things are connected, but they're not causally connected. So they're not cause and effect, but they are connected. And so Diana Pasulka said this once. She said that, like, that's this thing. Synchronicity is this thing that I've struggled with, she said, for a long time. And she included it in her book American Cosmic. And she also said that Jacques Vallée's been struggling with it, but he views it with this lens of the invisible college, which is a modern kind of offshoot of Rosicrucianism. Her words, not mine. So we have a direct connection between Rosicrucianism and some of these kind of ideas, these Jungian ideas, along, right, with ufology. And so the real meat and potatoes of this talk is the fact that these aliens that we're supposedly seeing in these UFOs could actually just be these angels, these other beings from these other realms. And so I wanted to give a brief description of what these other realms were and what these beings were and what they want with us, according to some of these more esoteric beliefs. Now, I am more flexible. I personally am not a Rosicrucian. I don't subscribe to any religion. I just find this topic very fascinating. And so I'm going to continue on without having to correct myself of being not a religious person. I'm just going to speak from the heart about what I know regarding this topic. So these angels in these belief systems, they are not physical beings, but they are beings, right? They are beings who live in our other bodies. And so the main landscape in which they interact with human beings is through our consciousness, through our ideas, through our imagination, through our goals, through our dreams, and through our intuition. Kind of a big concept there, but it's pretty important. It's pretty important, I think. So these beings give us visions and they give us motivations through visions. They reveal truths to us through these visions. But as people, we need to do our work. So they say, right? We need to do our work with educating ourselves about what language these beings speak and what symbols and visions they use to communicate with people. Because if we didn't know that, if we didn't have a ground understanding on those methods, we could think that they just show up and poke and prod us or abduct us, or they give us blinding light visions. It's not always like that. Some of the time these beings interact with us is obvious, but most of the time it's not. We have no idea that it's happening, and these interactions, like I said, they take place in the consciousness. So here's one way to look at it, and this is how Jordan Peterson described these Jungian principles of dreaming, that in the daytime we think that we can take responsibility for the thoughts in our head. It's very easy to imagine that we're responsible for those things because if the task at hand requires an imaginative thought, then you do it. You begin that process and thoughts come. But when you're sleeping, you're not really conscious and you're not active, but you are in a hyper imaginative state. So the question is like, if when you're dreaming, you're not consciously imagining things, but you're going through some very intense experiences in the dream, then who's making those dreams for you? Who is building those dreams for you, and why are they doing it? Again, this is a question that is posed by Carl Jung, but the answer lies within these Gnostic and Rosicrucian ideas, that it's in fact these angels not winged creatures, right? But these thought forms that are building these images in our mind, especially when we're sleeping. And so this is important because sometimes you wake up with new insights, and that's fun. Uh, but most of the time, your dreams are actually they're kind of like massaging and providing therapy for your emotional trauma, which can occur throughout the day. So, like, we have these wounds, and our body can heal them, but we have psychological wounds that our body doesn't heal. Psychological wounds require something different, right? And so this brings up the issue of trauma within the UFO field, because trauma appears to be some kind of trigger or catalyst for these experiences that people are having with so-called UFOs and aliens. And so how can this trauma, right? What does trauma do? What's so special about this trauma that can induce or spark a UFO experience, right? And so I would argue that trauma is the thing that your dreams are focusing on the most. Now, this is done through studies. If you guys wanted to look up this stuff, just go to like the work of like Matt Walker and Jordan Peterson and stuff. You could figure this out. That there is science behind what is healing us while we're sleeping. And so, you know, one way to relate this is like a film. Sometimes we watch movies that change the way we think. Sometimes we see a film or read a book that completely changes our view of something. And it does this because we are like empathetically experiencing a trauma through a character we're watching, and they begin to overcome it, ideally, if that's what the film is about. So as we experience this in the movie, we might leave the theater or turn off Netflix or whatever you're doing, a changed person because you have experienced this thing. And so that's what's going on in the dream. The dream is and even daydreams, right? They are building movies in our mind with a moral already in mind and in place. They have decided, and this is what I believe, that before you dream, the dream is decided. It's already written, it's directed, and you're living through it. And that's important because in film, you have comedies and tragedies and these different styles of film. And in dreams, it's very similar. It's very similar. So there are genres of dreams. We probably can call back on a horrific dream we've had, reminded us of a scary movie, on a comedic dream we've had, reminded us of a lighthearted buddy film. We've all had these. And sometimes the genres aren't too distinct. They bleed and blend in with one another. And that could kind of bring light to some of the complexities of the ideas that are happening within the dream itself. So what I'm getting at is, as a filmmaker myself, I understand the work it goes into writing, directing, producing, editing a film. I mean, it takes a lot of work. And even beyond the technicalities of a film, there are these elements of story that you have to pin down first, right? And so story is really complicated too. And in a story, you have to make sure that your character is being challenged, that their very weaknesses and strengths are being questioned and pushed in the right way as to really induce a change in the character. And so that's the same system that I see happening within a dream, is that someone else, not yourself, but someone else is setting up uh, a scene and a set and a time and all this stuff, and they're deciding the color of the walls, the style of your spouse, the feeling of the everything, how fast you can move, and these all give you a type of idea about what's going on. But subconsciously, what's happening is that you're being healed. Ideally, in the dream is a healing process. And these weird conscious experiences that are abstract and vague, well, that's the healing. That's the medicine. And that's why we like films and books and songs that have a lot of metaphor in them, right? I think some of the best love songs are songs that don't have the word love in them. There's something special about a metaphor. There's something poetic about it. And I honestly think that that's part of the language that these angels or these higher beings really speak, is one of metaphor, um, because of the lack of limitations that a being from a higher realm must experience, right? The physical world is very limiting, cause and effect. It's very limiting. In fact, we have to, even down to how we live, we have to consume food and all this weird stuff to survive. And we have to keep this body going. It's all very tedious. Um, but you get into these higher realms, these dimensions between the physical world and, let's just say, God, right? There's these different layers, just like the atmosphere, right? And the stratosphere and all that stuff. There's these different layers, these different barriers between us and supposedly in God, right? And so these beings are coming from these higher places. And that's kind of understood, I think, by everybody. What with the idea of they're so much smarter, their technology so much more advanced. Very few people have suggested that aliens are coming from a lower place, a place of ignorance. A lot of them think and assume, and maybe rightfully so, that these beings are of a higher intelligence. But the question is, how high? How much higher could an intelligence be than us? And what does that scale look like? Well, I don't have those answers, right? I do know that it would appear that these higher beings, they're not just higher beings who look at man and move along. A really interesting person named Rudolf Steiner suggested that, and he was a Rosicrucian scholar, I think from like 1890 to 1920. Could have the dates in that wrong, but that's the right era. It's definitely the right era. He said that these beings, these angels or these spiritual beings, they advance in their evolution along with us. They live in our minds. They do some of the mental work we take credit for. And their main goal is to evolve. And so they want us to evolve too, because otherwise they could not do it. And I think the same is true likewise. We couldn't evolve unless they were also evolving, right? Now, if you wanted to get hyper scientific with this topic and avoid the spiritual aspects altogether, and you wanted to find words that really help pin down what these things meant, uh, I think you'd find some analogies between a concept called neural nets and these angels or angelic realms, right? And so, what I mean by that is that there are checks and balances within the mind, again, that we take for granted and we might not pay attention to at all, which govern what we think, how we think it, and how we compartmentalize those thoughts. And these are like key because we're not flooded in the UFO community with evidence. We're just not. We hope we are. If you were to just examine the evidence over the last 80 years, you'd probably see a lot of stuff. Don't get me wrong, but we're not flooded with it. You have to find it. What we are flooded with, however, is human experience, people's stories. And these are important because it is a little like a dream. If someone were to tell you their UFO story or their alien abduction story, there's so little evidence that this happened in reality that we have to take their word for it, and then we're just listening to a very strange experience, and we're hoping, as we listen to these experiences, we're hoping to find common ground. We're hoping to find something important, something we can relate to, but we seldom do unless we've had a similar experience ourselves. So I do find that the retelling of a dream to somebody else is similar to the retelling of a UFO experience. There's similarities there, and I think that it's not because the UFO experience wasn't real. It's because of how we're digesting the information in our mind and then how we're retelling it. That's what I think is really important. The fact that we're having these conscious experiences and we're trying our best to retell it in a physical way, verbally, and it becomes very difficult, very difficult. And I said this before, I'll say it again, that one of the reasons it's difficult is because the dream is using metaphor. The UFO experience is using metaphor, and we're trying to apply a solid state definition to these things. It becomes very, very hard, very, very hard. What I've found and why I'm sharing this today for my UFO log is I found that by uniting these languages of science and this religious kind of idea, By uniting the languages, I have a more fulfilling sorry, maybe that's the word. I have a more fulfilling view of the UFO mystery, and I get more out of it. I feel as if I have an extra clue to look for answers. I definitely don't feel flooded with answers. I don't feel like I know everything, but this extra perspective has allowed me to decipher a lot of things that are going on within the UFO community right now. Um, all the way back to Hynek and Jacques Vallée, but all the way recently to people like Gary Nolan and Tucker Carlson, who are, Tucker Carlson's unabashedly talking about how these things are spiritual. They fit his spiritual view, his spiritual worldview, and they haven't seemed to really contradict it. I mean, if you listen to some of his recent statements, Tucker Carlson is very adamant that these things are 100% spiritual. And he lists these reasons why he knows this. And he goes through, like, old religions kind of match the same vibe, the idea of spirit and becoming physical, interacting with man. I mean, these are older ideas. These are the story of Christ. So I think a strong, you know, religious view might help a little here. But one of the things that's interesting is that a strong religious view is almost antithetical to scientific research. And in the UFO community, this is referred to as woo. It's kind of mocked, metaphysics and spirituality. It's mocked. Mm, and I've been frustrated with this for years now, because you have concepts like synchronicity and all these things, trauma and all these conscious connections to the phenomenon that's very physical, yet no one is willing to bridge the gap as to why. Like, why are these woo concepts married to a very physical scientific endeavor? Like, why? Why? We discuss it, I mean, often in spaces and whatnot, and just I think it's an open conversation too in the UFO world. But with this talk, I really wanted to solidify a couple ideas. All right. Number one, the leading class, the thought leaders of ufology, are using these religious terms. They're associated either directly or indirectly with these religious groups. The science they put forth, the findings and discoveries they put forth, the ideas they share at symposiums are coming from this perspective. They they are coming from this perspective. They're just not using the terms that were used when theosophy was banging out, right? They're using different terms. And like I said, they mask these ideas very well with these kind of like modern ideas of Jungian psychology, dimensions. And they really do a good job. Now, I just, without speculating or being a conspiracy theorist here, I have to ask why they aren't being more open about these things. And I think it's because they don't want to scare us off. They don't want to scare off the main UFO supporters, the main disclosure pushers. They don't want to scare us off, but I think it's going to I have a fear that it could really backfire on them. I have a feeling that when they reveal what they really feel, what they really believe, that people will get a sense of betrayal, and they will think that they've been hoodwinked. I really fear that, because if that's the case, then they will reject this stuff. And personally, I'm not a practicing anything. Rosicrucian, Catholic, Christian, Muslim. I'm not a practicing anything, but I do know truths when I see it. We've all found some truth in all these different ideas and religions. We've all found it. We've all found something that kind of resonates, whether it be Raelianism, if that's how you pronounce that, right? Islam, Judaism, it doesn't matter. There's a little bit of truth in everything. And in my life, from my perspective, from my research into UFOs, I find a lot of truth in what was being said about consciousness and spirituality from the 1800s, the 19th century. A lot of these guys were way ahead of the curve, and they might have been seeing things for how they really are. And I think that there's a reason why this topic has been stunted since the 1930s. I think the key and the dictionary that we should be using belongs to groups that we disregarded as foolish and ideological. And I think that this is the time to go back and to look this stuff up and to compare, as I have, the predictions and the writings and the viewpoints and the definitions of these very intelligent, very perceptive people who are hyper focused on pushing human evolution through intellectual progress. We look around the world now, we see the machines doing our thinking for us. Personally, I don't think that that's good. I think we need to ignite the spark of curiosity back in people. And one of the ways in which we do that is we prove that we were right about a lot of things. We gain our confidence back in ourselves. We go and we look back at some of the historical record, and we try not to assume that everyone was wrong because they're old, or because they talked about God when we wanted to talk about technology, or they talked about Jesus when we wanted to talk about an alien. I think as a community, we might be too dismissive, which scares me, honestly, as a ufologist. I'm startled by this. I'm worried about it. I want the curiosity to always be raging. I want us to always have a fire going as a community so we can keep coming back. And I know that I haven't mentioned anything about amendments or Congress or disclosure, and I'm not anti that stuff. I actually am pro disclosure. I'm just not interested in it. I'm interested in how people change, how people think, how people feel. I'm interested in what we're going to do if we get what we're asking for. And what would we do if we get something different? Would we be prepared for that? And it would be upsetting to know that some of these answers were right there under our nose, being told to us by our heroes, by the people we're looking up to. They have been telling us what they're doing, what they're finding, and what they're looking for, and why they're looking for it. And we've just ignored them. We've ignored them. The work of Rudolf Steiner, he wrote like 300 volumes of writings purely on Rosicrucianism, spirituality, and the human evolution. He wrote he wrote something called "What the Angel Does in Our Astral Body." So, what these higher intelligent beings are doing in our mind. That's how you translate that. What they're doing in our mind. And he predicted in that writing, he predicted the 20th century. I mean, he wrote this in 1904, I think, 1901. And what he predicted, he said that these angels that are working in our minds, building images and helping us out with our dreams and whatnot, they're doing that for a goal. They have a goal in mind to progress us through evolution, to bring us to spirit, to remind us of who we are at a deeper level. He said that our technology would get in the way, and eventually these angels, these higher intelligent beings who are communicating with us in our thoughts, would have to move their work outside of our dreams, outside of our thoughts, and into reality. They would show up here. And this is the wording he used. He said, if we're not careful, if we're asleep to the coming changes that are coming, then the consequences of our actions will descend upon us. Descend upon us. He's referring to these angels coming from where they're coming from and then descending upon the earth. He said that they will transform from their non-physical state to a physical state in order to engage with us physically. I've done a fair amount of work with UFO history. I've laid it out on a timeline. I'm a visual thinker. That's how I did it. And when I did that, I discovered, I mean, there's a huge boom that happened in the 30s and 40s. I mean, there were sightings that happened before, throughout all time. right? But the UFO boom occurred in like 1945. That's around the time that Rudolf Steiner predicted it would happen. And the weird thing is, and I'm not saying anything conclusive, but the weird thing is the similarities between the way that Steiner described this event and these events and the description of like people with missing time, people who've experienced these aliens face to face. So yeah, it's a little jarring and shocking that we have our thought leaders talking to us from a Gnostic esoteric perspective. And then we as a community are still like sitting around waiting for an alien to walk off of a ship. And when we hear these guys say stuff that they talk, because they do talk about it, they talk about this stuff a lot. When we hear it, we just the spiritual stuff just rolls off our back. And we just are still wide-eyed looking and waiting and hoping for an alien to land a ship, walk off, and then give us a laser that we can then use for our own technology. I just don't see that coming. I see that as a metaphor. It's a metaphor for these conscious beings to interact with our consciousness and bring about change through our actions. We might be receiving technology from them psychically. We might be receiving ideas to create the technology from them psychically, consciously, through inspiration. Back then, not back then, but a long time ago, they called these things the muse, right? The muses. Maybe ideas are things. Maybe our mind is another place. For now, we're going to leave these questions open. I'm going to encourage everyone to go do their research. All right? Go look this stuff up. Question what I said. Don't take it as doctrine. Don't take it as gospel. Just question it and go look it up for yourself and see if you can find any connections between Rosicrucianism, right? Rudolf Steiner, and then these current guys of Gary Nolan and Jacques Vallée and Diana Pasulka. And I found it. If you need help getting there, I'll send you in the right direction. But I found it. If you want to see more about this stuff, check out my films, Shadows of the Invisible Sun. I have 2 parts, third part's coming out soon. It backs all this stuff up. And I really want the community as a whole to start to pay attention to this side of it. Don't believe it. Don't believe it because I said it. Don't believe it because these other smart guys are talking about it. Just see it. See it for what it is. If you think there's truth in it, keep it in mind. If not, keep looking for answers. I think that's what this is about. Till next time, guys. Take care. Okay. All right. So there's the space. That's what did it. That's the whole shebang. That's kind of wild. I don't really remember doing that. I think it was like right around midnight. What'd you guys think? Did I deserve the W? I honestly suggest you guys go check out the other entries, for which there were a lot. Again, this was put on by an account. Let me bring it up real quick. UFO Talk Radio. UFO Talk Radio. A lot of really good entries in there. I got a lot of criticism, obviously, or whatever, for winning. Not by the contestants. Everyone was really cool. And they all did fucking amazing. They did great. But yeah, there was some other criticisms. But as I listened back to it, number one, I don't remember doing that. I remember kind of towards the end, realizing that I was running out of time, and I remember the feeling of not knowing if I had ever made a single point yet. But then it was over. So yeah, that's the deal. So check it out. It's the UFO Talk Radio. They put this little thing on. Just created their account in May. And inspired by the Jason Sand space, and this is what I hear, right? Inspired by the Jason Sand space, the space where a UFO whistleblower came into an X Spaces and talked to some regular guys I consider friends. It was Kimball, it was Astral, and of course the host Rob Wood, the great Rob Wood. It was a really cool thing. He this whistleblower was part of a rollout. He was going to be in a film by James Fox, the famous UFO documentarian. That was probably going to be his debut. And then in the end, it came out that Jason Sands just said, fuck it, and then hopped into his spaces. And the hosts were cool. The space itself was pretty cool. And so he stuck with it for 6 hours. That's a long time to be in the spaces, boys and girls. And shout out to everyone involved for making that happen. We got UFO intros in the space right now. Go follow UFO intros. That's Kimby. Yeah, and congratulations on that. Honestly, historic spaces. That was crazy. And look what it sparked off. Look what it jumped to. Look what it inspired. Right, a contest. Pretty sick. And the contest wasn't just some, crabs in a bucket, everybody scrambling for the W. The community really came together. There was a lot of great spaces that were done, a lot of great monologues that were made, and friends that were made because of it. You know what I mean? I didn't know much about Jonathan Caruso or Jiggy or these other finalists, but I did afterwards, so they're all good. Here's the voting breakdown. Screenshot that. I won by a single point. Shout out to Brian Johnson, Jonathan Caruso, Astral, Tom, Reptile, Jiggy, Terrestrial. Amazing, amazing contest. We're going to have to do another one. This is going to be badass. So, yeah, that's it. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. That was the spaces. I really wanted to get it on to my YouTube channel just to kind of have it. I might do some AI movie to it later of just me talking. No, I'm playing. The spaces, I think, was a culmination of real research, and like I said, there's a lot more of it on my channel. I really think that people should check it out because it just kind of backs up, I don't know. It's like the research behind what I said in the spaces is a good way to put it. It's just the research behind it, and it's pretty good. So again, if you're on my YouTube channel right now, go check it out. I'll show you what it looks like. If you're over there on Twitter, that's fine too. That's fine too. But pop over here. Let's see if I can pull it up. First of all, I really like the thumbnail of this situation. It's a really sick thumbnail. So yeah, here's my YouTube channel. Here's the stuff I put out. Some music, some videos. I put this documentary out a while ago, and it asked these questions about human evolution and whatnot. And I think it's sick. And so this is called Shadows of the Invisible Sun Part 1, and that's kind of the premise of my spaces. So this came out 2 years ago. So I'm just saying, being in the mix on this stuff. I think one of the strengths of my space was that I was able to kind of talk about stuff that I've been pretty familiar with for a while. So everyone out there, thanks for watching this stream. Now you know how it happened. Now you know what went down. Come check out my YouTube channel. Until next time, y'all. Peace.